Thank you. Oh, well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Conservation Area Advisory Committee meeting. We have two or three things to just deal with on the late item. But first of all, can I just ask if there are any apologies?
Yeah, one apology from Paul McLaughlin. That's all I have.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Then,
Chair, we can't hear you. You've been, that's it.
yeah. Okay.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Under the late items, I just wanted to make three announcements, really, I suppose. First of all, thank you for attending at this time. And just to remind everyone that 4 o'clock is now the new agreed time for all the future meetings. So if you could just make a note of that. The second thing is that we've got under item 7, two people have declared an interest in one of the items, which was going to be first on the list, the silk mill. What I'm proposing is we deal with the silk mill last under the list of items under item 7, so that the two people that are declaring an interest could leave the meeting when we get to that point. So if that's okay with everyone, we'll just make a change to the order of the agenda under item 7.
You'd better add me to the declarations of interest for the silk mill. I'm also on the board of the museum. Thank you.
Oh, that's good. Thank you for doing that. So those three people then would be able to just leave the meeting when we get to the very last item, but not before, please. And then the third item that I just wanted to mention is that those eagle-eyed amongst you will have noticed under the list of members that John Sharp is not listed there anymore, and that's because he's been in contact with me and said that he's unable to continue as a member of the committee. I said that I'm sure everyone would be most regretful that that was the case, and I was able to thank him for his wonderful contribution and valuable contributions over a long period of time in his capacity as a representative of the Ancient Monuments Society. So just note that is the case. We have been in touch with the Ancient Monument Society and are hopeful that they will be able to field an alternative representative in the future. Okay, so that was those. Item 3 then, are there any declarations of interest other than the three people that have already declared an interest in the silk mill? No. Okay, thank you. So we've got that now. And then item 4, minutes of the meeting on the 15th of October, which was our last meeting held in this way. You've had the minutes circulated to you. Would someone move that they're a true record?
I wasn't. We weren't there.
No.
I'm trying to think who is there. Chris, you were there. Chris Wardle. Is he? Oh, we've lost him.
We've got Chris Twomey. We got Robin.
Yeah, I'm here, but I wasn't there.
No.
I wasn't there either.
I wasn't there either.
Right. Okay, well, I'm going to move that we accept them as a true record. And Chris Wardle, if he is able to hear me at the moment. Chris, can you hear me?
Obviously not on.
Well, he's showing up as being
switched off.
yes, are you happy to just accept those minutes from the last
well,
meeting?
no, I think that the wording should be corrected.
Oh, right. What is the item that you're thinking should be corrected?
The Nicolova one. It
Okay.
specifically mentioned what's she brief, and I'm fairly sure, I mean, I can't be 100% sure, certain,
Yes.
that I said archaeological fieldwork without specifying what format fieldwork would take. I would assume that the city would take the advice of the county archaeological service.
Right. So, what is it that you're proposing should be just changed then, Chris?
Archaeological fieldwork.
It says at the moment, it says an archaeological watching brief would be needed.
No, but archaeological fieldwork instead of archaeological watching brief.
Okay. Have you got that, Lindsay? The sound wasn't very clear. Is that okay, Lindsay? Okay, so subject to that amendment, thank you, Chris. We can
accept the minutes.
We can accept them. Right, thank you. And then item 5, items determined since the last meeting, which is for information. I think it's all very clear. Thank you very much to the officers for that. Then item 6. Applications not being considered, and that's a listing of other applications that have been current in recent times, which are not on the agenda today, but it's for information really, so people are aware of what is going on, if we can accept that. And then we move on to item 7, which are the applications to be considered, and we have just agreed to move what appears as the first item, which is the first reference to the silt mill, and then there's a second reference to the silt mill as the penultimate item, and we've agreed to move both of those items to be dealt with at the last point. So, in which case, we're going to start then with the application that relates to the demolition of the assembly rooms and the adjacent multi-storey car park. Now, members will probably recall we did consider this proposal in September of this year and resolved to raise an objection to the proposal. And since that time there have been some additional information become available, which has been put onto the website, in particular relating to the additional costs that would be associated with replacement of roof panels and so on. So we've been asked to consider the matter again. Would anyone like to comment on the latest position regarding the assembly rooms, please? Chloe, are you going to just quickly sort of outline where we are on this one?
Yes, of course, I can do.
Thank you.
So there should be a screen with the assembly rooms, location and photographs in front of you at the moment.
Yes.
Just to remind you, this is what you said last time at Advisory Committee, 3rd of September this year. So just as an aide-memoire. The additional information, as you quite rightly said, has been submitted. This includes a roof inspection report, a structural condition report, in particular looking at the reinforced autoclaved or aerated concrete roof panels. There's been a letter with narrative also about the following items, which are addendum on the application file online. So there's an economic viability report addendum, a redevelopment feasibility study executive summary, and also some meanwhile use concept visuals. So obviously everyone's had a chance to have a look at that information, and I've just added to the next slide some illustrations of the concept visuals which have been submitted.
Thank you. So, is that it, Chloe?
That's it.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you very much. I was just checking you weren't moving on to another slide. So, could I open that item up for comment then, please?
Yeah, if I could just say, I mean, I think I don't see any reason to change what was said before in terms of the comments that we made. And I think the concern is the loss of the building and no certainty about what's coming in the future. I don't think the meanwhile uses give any confidence in the sort of medium term. So that's the concern, really, that once that building's gone, there's a huge and significant hole, and the market, the square will be significantly undermined by that. So that's a worry. So I think we need to know what's coming before we can think about what's it going, is my view.
Thank you. Are there any other comments?
Yes, I'd like to make one, Chris.
Yes, thank you, Max.
We'd like to add a rider to the objection when it comes down to, assuming we put the same objection in, that
yes.
Every care should be taken to rescue the Jacobean ceiling, the Carolean ceiling from the Darwin suite, and provision made for its careful preservation, storage and eventual reuse elsewhere.
Yes. That's assuming a decision was taken to demolish. Yep.
Assuming,
Yep.
Yes, in the event.
Yes. Yeah.
That could be
Thank you. Yes. That's a very important point, and I'm sure we will all agree to that being included in a comment. Yes. Are there any other comments, please?
That is assuming, of course, that the Jacobean ceiling is still there. It could be removed at the moment as it's not listed without conservation area permission, couldn't it?
There is a point of view there that it was listed when it was out of a listed building, which was never delisted. So it technically could be still listed. This has been raised with English Heritage, but we don't know the answer.
Right. Well, I suppose the legal eagles could pore over that one at the appropriate time if they needed to, but it is there as far as we know, and so it would be relevant to include the comment that Max has suggested.
Can I add a rider to that?
Yes,
I think it's quite important if there's a significant feature within the building that needs, and the building can be demolished, and that needs to be put aside and stored. I think the feasibility of putting it aside and storing it needs to be looked into at the point where where the decision is made about demolition, because I'm not satisfied that the ceiling will be in any condition to be reused at some future indefinite date. I really think this needs to be looked into, and it needs a specialist to look into it rather than just passing a codicil.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Any other comments?
Chris, can I say so?
Yes, please. Thank you, Ian.
We weren't. I don't think I was at the last meeting or when it was discussed before. I think it was when I was having trouble getting on the system. But the civics. I mean, I represent the Civic Society, and as you know, we've challenged the planning statement in detail, and it covers the point that Max made as well about the ceiling, and it also covered the comments about the structure. That Peter Steer's done a paper on the structure of the assembly rooms, and it sort of counters the comments made by the City Council's structural engineer. So I think it's open to interpretation. The only other thing is that we think that there should be an environmental impact assessment for the demolition of the assembly rooms, and it's not been made part of the package so far. We think that for a development of this type, it needs to accompany the application. So,
Okay.
I mean,
Thank you.
I've got chapter and verse here in front of me about why, but I don't think it's appropriate for the meeting. I mean, I can pass it to you following the meeting, so you can put it in the minutes if you like. But there's about 5 or 6 reasons, according to Peter Steer, that it needs an environmental impact assessment.
Okay, I think you've said enough for us to incorporate, if the committee is agreeable, that point without going into the full detail in the minutes, Ian. But thank you for that. So, does that conclude the comments at this point? It sounds as though it does. Okay. Basically, we've then taken into account the additional information that's become available in terms of the structural survey, the roof condition, and so on. But having considered all that, we've decided that we would want to keep with the previous objection, which related to the points that were set out. I don't know whether people were able to see it when Chloe put it on the screen, but basically the comment related to the fact that the certificate of immunity is expiring on the 11th of May next year, and the current proposal is felt to be not overly problematic regarding the multi-storey car park, subject to suitable replacement and so on. But the assembly rooms are recognised to be a significant building fronting the marketplace, the most significant building, in fact. And we included a little bit of information about the architect and the date and so on, and the style. And the fact that they've now, over time, been recognised as a quality design and fine example of the style of the period of their construction. And then we've quoted in particular the part of the National Planning Policy Framework, which is very clear. And in fact, I've got it in front of me, paragraph 198, in fact, says very clearly that local planning authorities should not permit the loss of the whole or part of a heritage asset without taking all reasonable steps to ensure the new development will proceed after the loss has occurred. And quite clearly, the current application fails to offer any certainty of development, and is silent as to the nature of any development that may be constructed. And we've agreed to add 2 additional points to the previous objection. The first being that in the event that the committee are mindful to grant consent, that a scheme should be put in place before the consent is granted, ensuring that great care is taken to ensure the protection of the Jacobean ceiling within the premises. And then the other additional point that we've agreed to put on is that that the decision to demolish the building should not be taken until a full environmental impact assessment has been prepared and considered. So are we happy then that is the new comment extended from the previous one? Are you okay with that, Lindsay? Are you okay?
Yes, I am, thank you.
Yeah, did I speak sufficiently clearly or slowly?
Yes.
No, yeah, for you to get that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Right, okay, then that concludes that item. So we can move on then to the next item on the list, which is relates to 4A Ashbourne Road, and involves the alterations and rebuilding of outbuildings to form a Class C3 dwelling. Chloe, could you just guide us through the details of that, please?
Yes, certainly. The PowerPoint should be showing the map of the area around 4A Ashbourne Road on the left side. which is located near the junction of Ashbourne Road and Brick Street. The site, as you can see, clearly noted in red, surrounding it in red, outlined. It shows the right of access between number 10 and 11 and the site itself beyond. In the photograph, you'll be able to see just between the gap between the two building blocks, the site itself. Some additional information has been submitted because obviously the building was quite well known as the Old White Lion Inn. And here's a photograph on the left showing the site, which is outlined in blue. And this is the building that has partially been demolished, and they wish to reinstate a building in this location. There's a plan top right showing the public house where the cottage once was and the brew house, and there's a mill adjacent. So here's some photographs of the area where the brew house and cottage once stood. There are still some walls, as you can see on the left-hand photograph. There is a front wall, or part of a front wall still remaining, with a doorway within it. And there's actually two doorways. And then there are obviously the adjoining wall. It's got some timbers and what looks like a blocked doorway. So those are the photographs on the right-hand side. So here's some photographs from another angle, looking at the gable end of the end of 4A, number 4, Ashbourne Road, just showing the location of where the proposed development is being proposed. So here's the existing layout. So where the former outbuilding was, as I said, there are walls still remaining, as you've just seen. Proposal is to form a dwelling in this location. So two walls, the rear wall and the side wall, is proposed to be reused. The structural engineer has agreed that those can be reused and underpinned. However, there is structural issues with the front wall, and that is not proposed to be reused. As you can see, the floor plan extends in line with the adjacent property. And on the ground floor forms a living area and shower room, and a bedroom to the mezzanine. Obviously there's also a dormer proposed, and materials are looking to match those adjacent. And here's a section through showing the construction. And that's it.
Thank you, Chloe. Oh well, that was very clear. Hopefully everyone could see the photographs and drawings and so on. I think we probably would feel that the residential use is appropriate in that location. It's a very small dwelling, but it could well suit, a single person or two people perhaps. But what do people feel about the details of the proposal in terms of the design and retention of some existing fabric?
Yes, Chair.
Can I just say that I thought the heritage statement provided with the planning application was wholly inadequate. It was disgraced. Yeah. At the minimum, the NPPF says that the historic environment record should be consulted. The person, whoever drew that up, didn't do that, and it fails to recognise that that area was a significant extramural suburb beyond the extent of the medieval city, and certainly there needs to be further archaeological work to establish whether or not archaeological remains will be affected by this proposal.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Any other comments?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Carol?
Carol, yeah. I think the scale of the building, the design and the materials, I think fit in well into that small space. The materials, the Staffordshire blue brick, reclaimed tiles, it all looks right for that little area, really.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other thoughts?
I just say that I agree with Carol. I thought it's a good design, and you know, it will be something that will look after that building, I'm sure. So I'm in favour of it.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to echo Chris Wardle's comments about the heritage statement, which is not only inadequate but full of wrong information. Generally speaking, we are not getting very good heritage assessments recently. This is something that might be possible to address at application stage.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Only a little detail.
Yes, Ian.
You know, in the corner where the ensuite is, the bathroom.
Yes.
There's a tiny outside. There's a tiny triangle that's left between the external wall and the new wall, and I just wonder if that's going to be a problem. You know, I mean, it just needs covering over or something, or included in the actual dwelling.
Okay.
If you look at it on plan.
Yep. Well, perhaps.
But it's only detail.
Yeah, perhaps Chloe could just have a word with them about that. Yeah. Okay. Are there any other comments, or are we okay on that as a proposal?
If I could just add one, Chris,
yes, Chris.
or two. Yes, Chris. Really just supporting what others have said. I think the principle is good in terms of residential use there and saving the building. I agree that the heritage statement is inadequate, and it would have been nice to have found out a bit more about it, and it would have been nice to have had drawings that show a little bit more context. So when you're drawing something that's relating to an existing historic building, it's always nice to show that building so that you can see how the relationship works. So it's a shame that didn't happen, but I think it's a fairly modest proposal. I think that my only comment would be that it might have been nice to have had some sense of how it looked, because as it stands now, there's the wall with the two door openings, and the new elevation doesn't really echo that in any way at all. And I just wondered if that could have been part of the story. But I mean, it's a fairly minor comment, really. I think it's fairly innocuous overall, so I'm not too concerned.
Okay, right. So everything seems to be fairly positive in the use, the design, scale and materials and so on seem to be all acceptable in a very tight location, and we've just got the concern really about the heritage statement, and perhaps we would state that we've no objection to the proposal, but feel that that the heritage statement should be improved before any consent is granted, really, because I think if applicants are able to proceed to a permission without preparing an adequate support document, then you know, that will become the norm over time. And so perhaps we could make a note that should be enhanced, in particular regarding the archaeological significance of the area, taking up the point that Chris made initially. Okay, so it's no objection, and we'll leave it to the officers just to investigate those other two minor points. One, the small triangle, and Chris's final point there about the treatment of the openings and so on, which I think Chloe could perhaps. So okay, if we could. So it's no objection, and what we're making a point about the heritage statement. Okay, if everybody's happy with that, we'll move on to Middleton House. it doesn't seem too long ago since several of us, I can't remember who was actually at the visit, but we did have a committee visit to the site, which was fairly extensive, really. I seem to remember walking around quite a lot of the building, and we did go into a fair number of rooms and so on, so which is very helpful. So we've now got a proposal relating to changes to the internal design. A great deal of focus is on the use of the basement for residential use, and staircases linking that to the ground floor, and also issues about the pod structures that were being introduced to facilitate the creation of bathrooms. So Chloe, could you just introduce that item for us?
Yes, certainly. You're quite right. I'm sure you remember this coming before you a little while ago. So this application is regarding Middleton House, which is in the photograph. The applicant wishes to undertake further works to convert the basement, which requires 4 new staircases between the ground floor and basement floor, and to install further bathroom or shower room and staircase pods within the main building. So this is the 1912 building which fronts St Mary's Gate. They also propose to undertake other minor kitchen arrangement changes to their scheme which has already been approved, only very minor changes to other floors in terms of kitchen unit arrangement. There's also on the ground floor an ensuite now proposed within the strong room, and door changes and blocking up of doorways, as well as has been already mentioned, measures to tackle the damp issues within the basement. So these plans, hopefully you can all see them. The top left is the existing, bottom left is the previously proposed plan. As you can see, nothing was proposed within the basement previously, and to the right hand side is the now proposed plan. So you can see there are 4 new staircases, 1 spiral staircase within room 1, 1 within bedroom 1 in flat 2, another staircase within unit 2, bedroom adjacent to bedroom 2 and the bathroom, and another one in the front, bedroom 2, unit 3. So they are the main changes, as well as obviously the internal subdivision, the inputting of the installation of bathrooms and WCs, etc.
Okay, thank you, Chloe.
Sorry,
yep.
just very briefly, to give a very quick reminder to about the basements. I'm sure you can remember what they were like when we were down there. On the ground floor, these are the views of the ground floor rooms where the spiral staircases are being proposed. First floor, once again, on the currently proposed, you can see plan, you can see where the locations of the staircases, new staircases, as well as the ensuite within the strong room.
Thank you. Yep.
So, turn the mic off. Could I just make an observation to not just to Zoe, but to anybody? When you're sharing a screen, I'm afraid it's got to be larger than this. You can't see the details of the shared screens. And so it's very difficult to work out. I mean, you can't read any wording, and it's very difficult to work out any details and plans. I think maybe you get like your IT to look at future sharing of screens, please.
Yes. Have you gone on to fit to window, Chris?
No. How do you do that?
at the top of the screen in the middle, then I think it might say actual size on your screen at the moment.
It says actual size, yes.
Yes, press that and it'll go then fit to window.
Okay, that looks better. Okay,
and then make sure you're on full screen. Which is and you'll get a much bigger. I mean, I suppose at the end of the day, Chloe's just introducing the item and reminding us of the things that we will have already looked at prior to the meeting.
In my case, I wasn't a member of the committee when.
No.
When you went to visit the building, so
yeah, no, I appreciate that. What I would recommend is that to avoid this difficulty, that when the agenda arrives, it's probably worth having a look on the city council system, and then you can at your leisure sort of look at the drawings and make them larger and read various bits and bobs. Rather than just,
I do consult the planning applications and all the details before these meetings.
Because it is difficult. You're right. It is difficult in the meeting itself to appreciate all of the details. But I think Chloe's certainly reminded us. I'm not
criticising Chloe. Don't get me wrong. It's just
understand that, Chris. Thank you. So I mean, we've got basically then. Probably the most significant, as I understood what Chloe was saying, things to perhaps think about are the introduction of the 4 staircases between the ground and basement floors, and the introduction of pods. I think the word is to create sort of bathroom enclosures and so on. There were other smaller changes, but I think perhaps those were the most significant. So I'll open it up for comment, really, if anybody's got any thoughts about what we've just seen.
Well, I've just got a question, really, for Chloe. What exactly is the purpose of the staircases? Is it so that the flat above can access the basement? Is that the way it's working? I wasn't quite sure.
Yes, that's right. It's extending the units which already have permission to give it extra space on the floor below.
All right, okay. Well, my main comment really is that I think it's important that the basement be brought into use if it can. Obviously, there is an implication with regard to the fabric of the building. But if this is the only way that it can be done, then I think I'm generally in favour of it.
Yep. Thank you. Any other thoughts?
Well, 2 points. Firstly, compared with the heritage statement for the last application, this one's exemplary. The other one is that I know this is a fairly well documented building because it was built as part of the county council headquarters in the early 20th century, but I do think that there ought to be programme recording fabric that's destroyed, assuming that this proposal is approved.
Sorry, I just missed one word. What did you say needed to be recorded? Appropriately recorded.
Fabric that will be destroyed.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
Can I just ask the bookcases on the ground floor? Are they part of the listing? Are they to be taken out, or are they to remain? Do we know? Is it something we can control, or is it not part of our remit?
This application doesn't cover anything further than I've just mentioned. The bookcases do remain. However, under the last application, if you remember, a very small section was proposed to be removed to make a doorway through. But the majority of them are remaining intact.
That's good, because I think they are important. And I was just wondering, if you put a spiral staircase in front of a bookcase that has a door on it, will you still be able to open the door? But that's something they can work out for themselves. We don't need to get involved, presumably.
Thank you for reminding us of the importance of the bookcases. Certainly when we visited, I think many of us were very impressed by that room, the main room, and so that is a very important consideration. I think when I looked at the drawing, there might have been a bit of space between the staircase and the bookcase, which might allow a door to open, Robin. But thanks for that. Okay, so they're not affected by this proposal. It's basically the main items are the introduction of the staircases and the pod items. So if there are no other comments,
I had one or two, Chris. Chair,
yeah,
please.
okay, Chris. Yes, please.
Yeah,
Yep,
I mean,
Chris.
I think the idea of the pods in the basement generally seems to work reasonably well, and I would support the use down there too. But I did think that the changes to the principal building, the 1912 building, were a bit of a retrograde step, and be mindful of the approval that's already in place, which did involve some compartmentation of those principal rooms. But I thought the stair and bathroom arrangement on the primary room on the left-hand side as you look at the building, and the stair at the back in the library seems to be quite a significant intervention. And then there's no detail in terms of how those stairs will be dealt with. I mean, they're going to be have potentially quite an impact, and they need to be very sensitively done, and all they've submitted is like a proprietary spiral stair, which doesn't give you that much confidence. I mean, I think they need to be handled with extreme care if they're going to be permitted. So they were my comments. I am concerned about the impact of those stairs. I'm not convinced that's the only way to unlock the basement under the principal building, the 1912 building.
Okay, thank you. Does that conclude comments that people want to make? I think it sounds as though it does.
Mate, Chris, is how they get the drainage up from the basement. But anyway, that's
Pumping?
how they get the drainage up from the basement.
Yeah, some sort of pumping system will be necessary. Yeah. Okay. So I think it sounds like, on balance, that we feel the benefit of bringing the basement into a use will outweigh the harm that might occur from some of the structural changes that are being proposed. So we're not raising any objection to the proposal, but it seemed appropriate to make comment, as Chris has suggested, that that the detailing of the staircases in the principal rooms is going to be something that needs to be very carefully considered, and those details would need to be presented at an early stage. Is that okay? Everybody happy? No objection?
Well, no objection, but don't forget the comments about recording the fabric that was destroyed.
I apologise for that, Chris. Yes, we need to put that in as well. That there needs to be a adequate record made of any fabric to be lost. Thank you, Chris, for reminding me of that. Okay, right, well, that's it for Middleton House. So the next item on the agenda is the corner of Utoxeter New Road and Talbot Street, erection of a food store. I think it's known that Lidl are the company involved. It's a Class E food store, and the proposal included a access car park, as they do, landscaping and associated work. So Chloe, could you just please remind us of the details of that proposal?
Okay, you should have the plan in front of you now in terms of the site location. It's on the corner of Utoxeter New Road and Mercian Way, just off the roundabout, and you can see on the plan the site, and on the opposite side of the road you've got the grade 2 engine house, and obviously the bonded warehouse at the top. I've included an aerial photograph just to give you your bearings. This is the site in the centre of this photograph. So this is Mercian Way, and that's just a general photograph of the site which we're looking at. In terms of the application, this was one of the views that was submitted. The very strong view down Mercian Way, looking at the bonded warehouse, and the site, of course, is on the left-hand side. So the layout of the food store, you can see top left the general proposal, which is running along the road, along Uttoxeter New Road with access, and the car park behind. On the whole, it's single storey, apart from the tower, which is in the corner location, which has got another storey to house a welfare and staffing area. The external elevations, so the top plan shows the north elevation facing Uttoxeter New Road. So you can see there is an amount of brickwork proposed, along with some render and powder coated aluminium windows. The east elevation, at the bottom part of the slide, is the elevation facing Mercian Way, and the elevations that are facing onto the car park and internally are shown at the bottom part of this slide. In terms of sections, this gives a pretty good idea of the roof and sections through the different parts of the building. This particular, the middle one, is section A, which runs through the store on that alignment that you can see on that plan to the top right. And here are some other sections through the store, within the actual store itself, not including the tower itself. The visual, concept visual that's been included within the application shows the junction, or how the building proposes to address the junction at the corner of Uttoxeter New Road and Mercian Way. So as you can see, the tower part of, or the two-storey part of the building at the very corner, and the single storey extending back. And the last slide is showing a visual showing the development within its context. Within the skyline study, it was highlighted that quite a key view within Derby was this view down Uttoxeter New Road, and you can see the Cathedral Tower over to the left-hand side, and straight ahead the Library Tower and the Guildhall Tower. And as you can see, they've done this mock-up to show that that view is not affected. And that's it.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Chloe. That's it all seemed very clear. Thank you. Right. So can I open up the application to some comment then, please?
Yes, Chris. Yeah.
Yes, Carol.
I think really for the area, it's appropriate, and it sort of does blend in with the bonded warehouse, and I have no objections. It's just as it is, a little.
It is what it is.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris, I'm quite happy with the design. I think, again, I agree with Carol that it looks well, it stands well, and reflects it's certainly better than most littles that you'll come across. Just one point, and that is that I feel that it's too close to the Uttoxeter New Road. Looking at the buildings, when we looked at that view down the road with the towers in the distance, it seemed to be set quite a bit further forward than the flats adjacent to it. and I would have liked to have seen it more in line with those flats. It would also open up that view a little bit more.
Could I add something to that, Chris?
Yes,
Sorry.
please.
I thought the same as David, but then I realised that when I walk up the Burton Road and I look at Aldi, they've set theirs back from the road and they planted a lot of lovely bushes, but unfortunately, it has a lot of litter.
Old chopping trees.
And so I think, on the one hand, being closer to the road will mitigate the fact that that there won't be so much litter.
Mess.
A mess.
And cars.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's a bit of a mix.
I'm not sure that will be the case because there's a small low wall running in front of it, and a gap. So I think people will just be dumping their litter over that wall, I suspect.
Okay, well, that's perhaps a point someone else might want to comment on. I suppose the implication of moving back, when I did look at the layout drawing, I felt it was fairly tight in terms of HGV manoeuvring, the car parking provision, and any landscaping that might be possible on the car park. And if we reduce the size of that, there could be quite a lot of resistance from the operators in terms of viability. I suppose the alternative view to the one David's put forward is that urban situations often don't involve grassy areas, and the characteristic is one of buildings up against pavement edges and so on. But I suppose perhaps David in this case is thinking of the impact on the wider views as well. So what we've got perhaps an issue there. We just need to try and explore a bit more if there are other people got a view on it.
I've got a question, Chair.
Yes.
Sorry. It's only concerning. That's a very certain times of the day. That part of Newtoxton New Road is very congested with traffic queuing back. Is the access? It looked to me from the drawings if the access in and out is off Newtoxton Road. Well, I can see cars queuing to turn right and blocking up the lights and so on. I'm just a bit concerned. Was there a transport report with? I haven't seen it.
Chloe, can you just is it possible to bring back up the layout plan so that we can just look at the access arrangements, or is that going to be too difficult?
It's not a conservation issue though, is it? It's for the committee.
No, I was just thinking it might be relevant to the issue that David has raised as well.
I mean, I won't say I'm not. I think the design's reasonable, actually, Chair. I was just concerned about the access, which, as you say, is not part of our remit.
I thought it was from. Yes, it's there. Yeah, so it's sort of relevant to David's point. I suppose if the building was further back there. But yes, it is located in that top left corner, isn't it?
Okay, yeah. I think that might cause some interesting discussions at the full committee meeting.
Yeah, I mean, there might be, I think there's a secondary, whether that's just an exit onto Mercian Way, I don't know. But so any other thoughts about this sort of setting back or not?
Chair Hardield in there, right?
Yes, hello. Thank you.
Hi there, Chris. I just wanted to concur with Carol and the view. I mean, it looks it looks okay as it is to me.
Yeah.
So I support the view that pushing it back in terms of trying to get a better perspective down the road would compromise the parking space, and as you mentioned. So I'm quite happy with it as it is.
The site's been an eyesore for a long time, so getting it back into something decent use is certainly a priority for me.
Yeah. It certainly would be better use of that space than currently.
Yeah, I agree with that, Hardiel.
Just a point about its location vis-a-vis the road. If my memory is not mistaken, which it could well be, I thought that the former Trent bus depot was in a similar position vis-a-vis the road to the current proposed position.
Yes, you're right, it was, but there was no Mercian Way and no traffic island there then.
Well, yeah, but that's on the other side. I'm talking about the new road.
Right.
And if I can raise a comment or two, Chair.
Yes, Chris.
Yeah, I thought on the positive side, I thought the relationship to the road was reasonably strong in that there's a good active frontage and all the parking's concealed, because quite often these format food stores try and create vast areas of parking out the front. So they're not doing that, which I thought was good. I mean, there may be an argument that says pull it back slightly to create a slightly better frontage with perhaps some tree planting. I don't know, but I think the principle is fine. I wasn't convinced by the very bold arch motif, I suppose. Personally, it seemed to me a bit fussy and trying quite hard. It probably just could do with a bit of calming down. And then I thought the end elevations particularly were very weak, because you've got the very strong arch, which is then just infilled with render or something. I'm not sure, but that to me was disappointing.
Okay. Any other comments?
I second that.
Okay. I mean, would it help if those arches that are currently proposed to be, well, it looks like render, were glazed, and even though it might be that they need to be opaque or something, I don't know. Would that be a better solution rather than those render surfaces? I don't know.
I suppose my point is a bit more about design intent. I'm not quite sure what they're trying to do here, and it's not clear in the design and access statement what the driver is, if you like, for these arches, which are quite striking and bold, as I say, but I'm not sure what they're trying to relate to. And then having created them, if you're then sort of blocking them up immediately, it seems counterintuitive to me. But I think if you look at the visual, if you're able to jump back the view along the street, that brings into sharp focus that end elevation, which does look rather disappointing. That one, yeah.
Yeah. Right.
What would you think if we said that an elliptical arch would have been better than a pure arch like that? It's not really in keeping with arches in that area, in the brickwork in that area.
I mean, I might be giving them too much credit, really, but I just wondered whether the railway theme, given the bonded warehouse and the engine shed and so on, whether somebody was thinking that these are like railway arches.
I'm sure you're right.
Then that could have been the thinking. I don't know. You're right. That view of those rendered areas is not ideal. Whether that could be perhaps a comment that we ask them just to consider this perspective, both in terms of the nearness to the pavement edge and that treatment of those arches that are prominent in the photograph that we're looking at the moment. But are there any? If we seem to be fairly happy with the scheme as a whole, one, it brings a use back onto the site and brings buildings back and activity. Which is all positive, and we're talking about some fairly minor detailing, aren't we, that we perhaps would ask them to just look at further in terms of the treatment of those arches there and the amount of setback from the pavement, which perhaps are things that they could just consider a little bit further. Are we happy with that then?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Right. Thanks very much for that. And thanks for Chloe for being able to display it as well as it is. So we're now moving on to. There are two applications that relate to the silk mill, and that is the final item of our agenda this evening, which it is now, I think, perhaps late afternoon, and So there were three people that had declared an interest in these applications due to their involvement with the management of the silk mill. So it may be that that we could perhaps say goodbye to those people. And in the case of Max and Carol, I suppose Max will just have to move a little bit away, but in the other cases, people may wish to sign off, and then the remaining people can just consider the alterations to the silk mill which are related to signage. So if that's okay with everybody, as a way of organising things, I'd say goodbye to those that are going to now leave us because they've got an interest, and there's really no point in coming back to the meeting for me just to close it. So it might just be best dealt with in that way. So if we just wait a minute or two whilst people leave that have declared an interest, and then we could just ask Chloe to lead us through the silk mill proposals in a few minutes' time.
Okay. Goodbye and Merry Christmas.
Yes. And to you, Robin.
Goodbye.
Hope you have an enjoyable one. Yes, and you, David. Yes, and Max.
Chris, Max is gone, but he'd like to raise one or two things in any other business, so he'll come back if that's all right.
Okay, that's okay.
He's gone.
Okay, right. So, Chloe, if you could just tell us about the signs, please. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, this is an advert regulation application and a listed building application regarding internal and external signs at the silk mill, grade 2 listed, obviously within the city centre conservation area and World Heritage Site. So here's a plan, and I'm just pointing out a sign which is going to be replaced as part of that application, because later on there's a plan which you can't quite see the location of it. So there is a sign to be replaced shown on that plan. In terms of the external signs, there are a number of them, and they can be seen in the locations of the pink dots around the site. One of the first ones, 1.1, is in relation to the River Derwent, and it's located here attached to railings with a railing fixing. There are three others which are relating to the world's first factory, the world's fastest bogie, and also Derwent Valley Mills World Heritage Site, and they are all signs on timber posts as shown in that diagram. There's also a couple of other signs on the exterior of the building. One's a poster clip frame, as you can see, located at the bottom of the tower, and that's adjacent to the new extension, and a high pressure laminate sign adjacent to it regarding the silk mill gates. The replacement road sign, which I pointed out on the first slide, so the illustration of the new sign will be what's on the left, and there to the right is some illustration of the type of materials that are proposed. Also to the building, looking at the building at the front elevation, there's a fret cut entrance sign which is above the door, and then on the main entrance, above the main entrance, as you can see in the visual at the bottom, there's the main sign saying Museum of Making. There's also proposed a banner sign, a PVC perforated banner sign, and you can see it located to the left hand side of the new extension, and some examples on the right hand side of what the banners are proposed to look like. Once again, materials inside, they're generally acrylic and plywood. Externally, there's some aluminium very few, but there are a couple of aluminium sign tray, but they're just to give an idea of the materials. And just on the side elevation facing the river, there's a wall-mounted, very small sign just illustrating where the entrance is. Inside, once again, as illustrated on the plans with pink dots, there's a number of different signs. Now, they've tried to minimise the number of signs. They've tried to achieve an aesthetic balance between carefully considered signage to minimise the impact, and also to try and make them reversible in terms of attaching things into mortar joints, and trying to be sensitive in where they're locating them. And so that's part of their the information within the application. Just quickly finishing off. Inside, they've sort of done mock-ups of where different signage is proposed to be located, both in terms of sections through the building and also photographs showing the size and location. For example, the bottom right photograph is at the top of a staircase, so it's looking at an illustration showing which floor number and where other things can be found. So this is just to give a bit of an idea of their thinking behind the locations of the signs inside. And that's it.
Lovely. Thank you, Chloe. I mean, I felt when I looked at the details that they'd been restrained in terms of the size, location, nature and colour and everything else, and had sort of tried to think very carefully about people finding their way around the building and everything else. And to be honest, I didn't really see anything that worried me too much. Well, so what do other people feel about the proposals that we've just seen in terms of the signage?
I agree with you, Chair. Looks pretty tasteful to me on the whole. I can't see anything to object to.
No, thank you, Mike. Any other comments?
Yes. Could
I just ask, Chair?
Yes, Carol.
The very first signage we saw, Chloe, if you get the very first, it was like a horizontal display panel to go outside the museum. There were two of them. That's it, slide 3, I think. So I've forgotten the size of those, and because you said those will be attached to the railings. Could you just be more specific?
Yes, of course. You should be seeing the slide now.
Yep.
Is it 740 by 300? Is that the?
That's right.
All right, I missed that. My eyes. Yeah. Right. So 740 width. Yeah. Right. So that's quite big. And it's going to be attached to which perspective? Is there a perspective idea of how it will look next to the building?
I'll just have a look. I don't think there is.
They don't look like they're 740 by 300.
No, they don't. I was thinking that the difference between the width and is what, about 10 times the length, the height, isn't it? Yeah. Rather than twice. So something's not quite right there. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that's something perhaps that we should ask. They should.
Yes, am I still on?
Yeah. I just think that we need to see that in perspective, because
yes,
to me that looks. I would not be overly keen on that design attached to railings.
No. I understand that there is potential for an opening in Easter, and I suppose we don't want to cause any delay as a result of that. I'm wondering whether we could deal with this outside of the meeting schedule, so that perhaps if Chloe was able to just clarify the size of those, and whether there is a perspective to show them, that whether we could circulate that to committee members perhaps over the next few weeks, and rather than wait for the next meeting, if that then starts to get tight for them in terms of ordering and so on.
If I could just say, comment, I disagree with the last speaker about the sighting of the railings. I think it's because what they're trying to do is to show the building in the context of the Derwents. I think it's quite apposite that they should be sited next to the river on the railings, because they get having railings next to the river anyway. So I don't have a problem with that.
No.
I don't disagree. It's just the visual perspective of the actual board, not the interpretation, which I think, yeah, you need the interpretation, but it's just the impact of the look of it, and the size of it. I would just like a perspective picture.
Given that that's a long, narrow corridor, and you can't, you can't see it from the other side of the river because there's nowhere to look at it from. You can't see that any kind of perspective. You can't show it on a photograph because you're just looking at up a corridor at something that's going to be by your right hand. I don't actually see how you could show that at all.
But I think there is a point here about the view from the river, isn't there? You're looking at the back
there's nobody on the river, and there's just buildings on the other side. So,
but
I mean, it's just the back of the sign from the river.
Yeah, the back of the sign's not the greatest thing.
No, I agree with that. Yeah.
Context, but I mean, apart from that, I mean, I thought the scheme was really, really good. I think the signs are really good, well considered. The locations all seem sensible. The information seems really useful and important. I thought it was a good scheme, but I think there is a point about when you put something on a railing, you have to think about both sides of it.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't look at all the signs, but one key element of the 18th century building was the twisting sheds, which lay immediately parallel to the river, immediately south of the silk mill itself. Is there going to be any reference to that in the display? Because that building no longer exists.
Well, I mean, it's not for us to intervene in the content of the signs.
I think that comment should be recorded, that there should be reference to the twisting sheds.
Yes.
An important part of this silk production process.
Right. Well, perhaps Chloe, you could pass that on to the people who are involved in the production of the signs. I'm still wondering how to deal with this question of the railing signs, and just conscious that that we've got a meeting for a while, and perhaps the best way would be to ask Chloe to seek some clarification on those, and then to perhaps just circulate something to members of the committee so that people can be reassured in terms of the size and the approach. And if Chloe, you could mention that there was this point raised about the back of the signs, whether you see them from bridge, whether you would see them if the river was ever brought back into use as a for people being able to move around on boats and so on, then it's just worth considering, isn't it? And certainly Carol has highlighted the fact that we don't know the size of those, because the dimension that was on the drawing is clearly not of those signs. So perhaps if we seem to have a we're content with the signs as a whole, the nature of them, the scale, sighting, and so on, all seem to be appropriate. But we've just got this query about the railing signs, and then the point that Chris has made, Chloe, I think that's best made to the people who are having to consider the content of the interpretation, but that's really up to the people who are dealing with that, as to what they include or what they don't include.
Yes, I can contact them.
Yeah, yeah, lovely. Okay then, so general satisfaction, but just a couple of my points to suggest with them. Thank you. Yes, Ian.
Has any provision been made for disabled? Because I mean, I love the signs. I think the signs look great. But if on the descriptive signs, especially, if you're blind or disabled, or blind or deaf, or sorry, blind or deaf and blind or whatever. If you're blind, for sure, you know you're not going to be able to read the signs, are you? So I don't know if Chloe could tell us if they've done anything about considering disabled people with the signage. It's not a conservation area item, I suggest, but it's just that you've got all these beautiful signs dotted around with all these descriptions of the River Derwent and the Silt Mill, but unless you've got 20/20 eyesight, you're not going to be able to read them, are you?
Well, within the application, nothing's mentioned regarding that, but it's certainly, along with the other item that was mentioned, I can certainly contact them on that.
Yeah, thank you.
There's quite a lot of information on there that some people won't be able to read.
Well, it's a fair point. Thank you for throwing that in, Ian. And you know, perhaps somebody can think about that. I've never really noticed braille panels or whatever, you know, next to signs, but I'm sure it's something worth thinking about. But thanks for that. Okay, so that concludes the final item on the agenda. Now, it was just mentioned by Carol that there might be some suggestion that there is any other business, but there is no item of any other business on the agenda. And that does present a bit of a problem in the format that we are meeting. I don't know, Lindsay, if you're able to...
We can finish the meeting now.
Terminate the official meeting and the broadcasting of it.
The officers, my colleagues, will all leave, and that will leave you the space to do your private side of the meeting.
Well, yes, I mean, it was only really an exchange of information usually that, you know, but and we just maybe need 5 or 10 minutes at most. So
if I just
conclude the meeting.
Yeah, Karen, will you finish the broadcast, please?